Your Denver Broncos get a triple dose of fantastic news at the NFL trade deadline, and it all happens while they sit by and do absolutely nothing. Denver Broncos fans, we will look back on this day and be thankful that George Paton and Sean Payton did not overpay for any of the players on the trade market who'd been rumored. The Broncos acted like adults. They chose a protein shake over a can of Mountain Dew, and the dopamine hit. I would have been the first person on here making a video about how pumped I was to have Jalen Waddle as a Denver Bronco, but these stats do not lie. The receipts do not lie that more often than not, trades at the deadline do not make a meaningful difference. We as Broncos fans should know that better than anyone else. We traded Demaryius Thomas, we traded Bradley Chubb, we traded Barron Browning, we traded Jeudy. Which of those players went on and helped a team get better or moved the needle at all? They typically don't. In this video, we're also breaking down how it was actually better for our division, some of the moves that happened, why it's a much tougher road for the Kansas City Chiefs now. We're breaking all that down and more. But as we see here, the one player who was rumored in the Broncos trade deadline was really Jalen Waddle. Everyone was tweeting out penguin pictures, and yes, that would have been incredible to have him as a Denver Bronco, but the price for him was probably a first and a third-round draft pick, which is just way too steep when you see that this Broncos team has been built and is at the top of the AFC right now, and the two games they've lost have been on fourth-quarter walk-offs, and they have done all of that because George Paton and Sean Payton are tremendous drafters and evaluators of talent. We kind of could have predicted this entire thing just by looking back at George Payton's statement a couple years ago where he said, hey, we believe to win in the long run, you have to draft and develop young talent. So we want George Paton and Sean Payton to have as many quivers in their arrow or arrows in their quiver as possible because they have receipts of doing this. You could list all of the all-pro players on our team right now who we could have gotten a king's ransom for that the Broncos have drafted and developed. So I think this was phenomenal. And then it's even better than just the fact that they didn't have disaster. You just go through and they're all over my timeline now are all of these NFL trades that seemed like, oh, this is going to push this team over the edge, and they lose out or miss the playoffs or absolutely suck. The fact that it's the Dallas Cowboys making some of the biggest moves of the day tell you everything you should know. Would you want to be the Jerry Jones of the league? No, this is the smart move. This is adults in the building avoiding a dopamine hit that lasts 2 seconds on our cell phones and doesn't actually move the needle. On top of that, I also think we get good news that our division rivals, who we're going to be competing with for the playoffs in both the Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs, did not go out and make moves. They are in win now mode too, and they need way more help than the Broncos do. They actually have clear spots on their roster where you can say, that's a huge deficit. Already right now, I don't think wide receivers a deficit for the Broncos, or Sean Payton wouldn't have traded away Devon Vele during the offseason. He obviously thinks this wide receiving room is good, and we already have so many mouths to feed. We still think the ceiling for Evan Ingram is high. That last week we just played, our offense didn't look great, but we were also missing our most explosive player in Marvin Mims. And so as we look here at the Chargers, who need both a serious tackle. They're down both of their starting tackles, and you're even seeing on their version of Predominantly Orange putting out tweets and articles saying hey, our season is over for the Chargers right now. They had Super Bowl aspirations, and now they're already phoning it in, and the Chargers did not go out and make a move for a meaningful tackle to fill in for either Slater or Joe Alt. Instead, they went out and got a guard who's got a 50-score PFF score. So they got Trevor Penning at the trade deadline. Again, is he going to fill in for one of the best tackles in football in Joe Alt? Absolutely not. You love to see that. On top of that, they came out and reported the other day that Omarion Hampton will not even be cleared for that first 4 weeks until after their bye week, which means he can't start practicing until then, which means he's probably not back until week 12 or week 13, and they have some very, very tough games ahead for the Chargers. And so they didn't go out and get one of the best running backs in the league, which is Breece Hall. Breece Hall was tweeting all during the trade deadline, hey, I want out of here. I just saw a couple of my favorite friends on this team get traded from the Jets. Please get me out of here. Get me out of here. And the Jets wanted a third-round pick for Breece Hall, and nobody was willing to give that. I think Breece Hall on either the Chargers or probably more importantly, the Kansas City Chiefs would have made me very, very scared, especially playing Kansas City in a couple of weeks. All you have to do is stop Patrick Mahomes from throwing the ball, and you're going to win, because as you look here, this is the NFL rush leaders where J.K. Dobbins is sitting at 5. Even though we barely have handed him the ball this year, he's the has the 5th most rushing yards in the NFL. You have to scroll all the way down to number 30 to see their injured Isaiah Pacheco, who might not even be activated by the time we play them. So the Kansas City Chiefs have a massive gap there. They need a running back, and they could have had Breece Hall for a 3rd-round draft pick. Thankfully, that did not happen, and I think that is the long-term view of a great team, is you do not make these Hail Mary type moves at the NFL trade deadline. So the fact that neither the Chargers or the Chiefs got better at the trade deadline is great news for us. The fact that we avoided a disaster and we're giving Sean Payton and George Payton as many rounds of ammo as we have so that they can continue to do what they're elite at, that's fantastic news. And then other fantastic news we get at the trade deadline is we see that the Raiders tried to have a fire sale. The problem, they didn't have enough merchandise to even have a fire sale. I was texting my main man, Graphic Raider, who I'm going to do a video with previewing the Broncos-Raiders game tomorrow night. And he was like, man, I'd love to have a fire sale. We just don't have anybody to sell, and we're not going to trade Max because he's the only person who puts people in seats. So the one person that they did sell, which really makes the Raiders as close to one-dimensional as you possibly can be, is their best wide receiver, Jacoby Myers. He was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 4th-round pick and a 5th-round pick, I believe. And you just see the culture in Vegas right now. You see that he's like saying, I'm laughing my butt off, and the deuces emoji. So that shows how bad the culture is in Vegas, that's how you announce to your fan base that I'm out of here, is like deuces. And then on top of it, the fact that the Broncos tomorrow night, or Thursday night rather, have a chance to play a one-dimensional team where if you stop Brock Bowers and you stop the run game, the Broncos are on to the Kansas City Chiefs sitting at 8-2. Fantastic news there. So Chiefs didn't get better. Chargers didn't get better. The Raiders actually took a step back. That's fantastic news. And then on top of that here, and then the Chiefs, like the entire Chiefs fan base was losing their mind that the Chiefs didn't make that move for Breece Hall, seeing even just like diehard content creators saying like, if we don't make a trade at this deadline with all the problems we have with Mahomes being on his back and getting hit more in that game against a dinged up Buffalo Bills defensive line than he had ever been hit in his career, they're like, I think we're actually screwed if we don't make a trade. Well, they didn't. And then on top of it, the only teams who actually upgraded during the trade deadline were the Indianapolis Colts in getting one of the better corners in football. He can't carry Patrick Surtain's jockstrap, but that's Sauce Gardner. Well, after the Broncos play us, they have to play the Colts with now a fantastic defense, knowing that they have Sauce Gardner on there. How well that will age for them, giving up 2 first-round draft picks and Adonai Mitchell. That's a lot to give up for him, but that makes that game way harder for the Chiefs, which I already thought it was going to be a very, very hard game for them. And then on top of it, you see the Cowboys, who came in with a turnstile of a defense, get one of the best defensive tackles in football, and the guy from the Jets, and they got a middle linebacker from the Cincinnati Bengals who leads the league in interceptions. So you look here as the Chargers are looking at their schedule. Now these next 2 games, which already would have been tough, now the Cowboys might actually have a defense, and Patrick Mahomes hasn't shown the ability to outduel anybody. And now it's going to be harder to outduel the Cowboys with a much better defense. So Broncos made the adult move. They avoided the dopamine hit to give Sean Payton and George Payton as many rounds at this thing as possible. We see the Chargers and Chiefs both not upgrade whatsoever in a meaningful way. We see the Raiders actually take a step back, and then I guess this should have been like a quadruple dose of good news. And then on top of that, the Chiefs truly might miss the playoffs this year. I know everyone's probably pumping the brakes and saying I'm declaring their demise a little too prematurely, but I think that Colts game is going to be a much harder game than it looked on paper. I think the Texans game is going to be hard for them. I think they are going to have a hard time beating us, and so you could truly see a world where they're even after they lose to us, you're at 5-5, and they're going to be at the outside of the playoffs. So this trade deadline, in my mind, honest to God, I think this was a perfect trade deadline for your Denver Broncos. We're sitting at the top of the AFC. We don't need to make panic moves. We run this division. We run this conference in Broncos country. We got a ton to believe in. Come on.